All right. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are folks doing today?
Wonderful.
Good to see you, Sherry. Haven't seen you in a while. How you been?
Oh, good, good. Great to see you.
Yes. It's been a couple, yeah. 2022, I think, was the last time.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Oh,
Well, so we're gonna
that just hit me. That was 2022.
summer 22. Yeah, I was like, that was
That's
a while. It
right.
doesn't seem
In
that far away, but
Indianapolis, yes, that went by pretty quickly.
yeah. So we'll get started in about 3 minutes or so. So 11:05. So 5 after the hour for Eastern time. So in the meantime, if folks want to put into the chat where you're tuning in from, whether that be your institution or your organization, and what role you have in fundraising. And if you aren't in advancement, I'm just curious to see what you hope to get out of today's presentation and what brought you here. Would love to hear where folks are tuning in from. We'll get started in a couple of minutes.
Hold on, sorry. Oh, it's on mute.
See some familiar names.
Good morning, Geneva. It's Paulette. And for whatever reason, I'm having trouble with my camera this morning.
No worries. Good to see you, Paulette. I
Yeah,
know it's a busy week for y'all, so thank you for, joining.
yeah. I may not be able to say the whole thing. It's board meeting time.
Yeah. Y'all got a lot of planning for next week.
But I
So
definitely wanted to join.
lovely. Thank you for coming.
And Paul and Geneva, this is Angela. I don't know. Paulette forwarded me the invitation, so you see two Paulettes on the screen. So
Oh, okay.
there's two Paulettes there. I'm the other Paulette.
Yes, thanks for coming. I know y'all are busy this week. Good to see everyone. I can't see the chat right now since I'm sharing my screen, but I hope it's bustling with locations and with roles and that folks are able to make some connections today. That is really the goal of the Philanthropy Institute and of the Fundraising Fireside series. So we'll get started in about a minute or so just to give folks time to log in and, put your cameras on and get settled for today's presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Monique. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Good to see you.
Okay, I'm going to probably turn my camera off here. I figure out how to do it.
Should be a button on the bottom of your screen.
Video.
There you go.
Stop video. Okay. Great.
Hey, Sherry Paramore. It's nice to see you on here.
All right, so it is 5 after the hour, so we are going to get started with today's presentation. So wonderful having you all here for the UNCF Philanthropy Institute Fundraising Fireside series. So this is a fairly new series for us, so I'm very excited that folks are in attendance and have, dedicated your time to today's hour of presentation. So today's presentation is titled Philanthropic for the Culture. We will be joined today by Dr. William Broussard. He is the Vice Chancellor of University Advancement at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. And his presentation today will essentially be about using moves management to develop and sustain philanthropic culture in HBCU, MSI, and low resource institutional advancement. So just a couple of housekeeping rules before we get started today. So please be aware that we are recording this session. For folks that weren't able to attend, we want to make sure that they are able to get today's presentation. And also, if you were able to attend, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to go back and review the presentation so that you don't feel like you have to take a ton of notes right now while you're sitting here with us. You'll have access to the presentation and we'll be disseminating that out in the coming days so that you can view the session again. If you do feel comfortable, we ask that you turn your cameras on, and if you're positioned to do so, we ask that you turn your cameras on because we hope that the Philanthropy Institute Fundraising Firesides is a community of practitioners in practice. So we want to make sure that we are building and fostering community. So we like to see, the grid fill up with people's faces so that we actually are seeing and meeting and engaging with one another in a more, informal type of environment than a traditional webinar type of series would be. And if you aren't speaking, we ask that you mute your microphone just so that we aren't getting any audio feedback and so that we have, able to make a clear conversation. But if you do have something to say, whether it be a comment or a question, feel free to use the features on the bottom to raise your hand, or you could use the chat function to submit your question there, and then we'll elevate that up throughout today's presentation. If feedback is really important to us, and we use the feedback to determine what type of subject matter experts we should be engaging with so that we could do presentations in the future, as well as learn about what was the value add for these type of presentations. So please stick around till later in the presentation so that you can complete the evaluation form, because it's really valuable information for us to learn straight from the folks that are in the room about what you want to see and what you want to learn about in the future. And then lastly, we hope that we will be able to continue the conversation on LinkedIn. So we'll be sharing our LinkedIn information later in the presentation so that you could, jump into the chat, meet some new folks, and also bounce off ideas with your peers on social media. So in terms of introductions, today we have Dr. William Broussard, who is an award-winning higher education advancement and college athletics executive. He is also a professor who teaches classes in college writing, journalism, public relations, and public administration. He is a higher education and HBCU scholar with over 150 published peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, essays, and op-eds, and he has presented at over 80 national and regional conferences. His first monograph was titled Fundraising in Public Regional Universities, and it was published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2023. And I'm very excited to announce that he is going to be publishing his next monograph titled Perspectives on HBCU Fundraising in 2026. So look forward to that sometime next year. My name is Geneva Dampere. I serve as the Director of Strategy and Operation here at UNCF's Teaching and Learning Center. And within the Teaching and Learning Center, we have the Philanthropy Institute. So the Philanthropy Institute was established in 2023 to propel professional development and networking for those responsible for raising considerable funds and support for HBCUs, as well as other underserved organizations, so that we can make sure that those individuals on our campuses and within our organizations can become the industry-leading experts that we need them to be for our community. The UNCF Philanthropy Institute is the first of its kind, and we provide training, resources, and opportunities, all designed by and for advancement professionals at Black and other underserved organizations. So our primary pillars and the focus of our work is to make sure that we are increasing fundraising capacities at our HBCUs and other non-BIPOC serving organizations. We also create professional development opportunities such as, the Fundraising Firesides series, where people can connect, convene, and learn from one another. So we hope that you find value in today's session as well as future sessions. And then lastly, we try to strategically and intentionally engage with executive leaders and board members so that they can continue to build a culture of philanthropy within their organizations. So with that, I will be passing today's presentation off to Dr. Broussard.
All right. Thank you, Geneva. Is everything showing up okay with today's goals?
Yes. So if you want to advance your screen just so I can make sure it's progressing.
I'm advanced on this end to today's goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks good to me. Is anyone else
Okay.
able to see? I just want to make sure.
All right. Looks like we're ready to roll. Okay. Thank you, Geneva, and to the good folks at the UNCF for inviting me. I have to say, I don't know for sure that I was the first person to respond to the outreach of folks who might be interested in presenting, but I was equally excited to be able to present to an audience of folks with UNCF as much as I was when I saw Fireside a couple of weeks ago here. We were getting some -10, -20 temperatures. Today it's in the 40s, so not as much need for the Fireside, but I'm really excited to spend some time talking with all of you this morning about philanthropic culture in fundraising. So today's goals: Really quickly, first of all, I want you all to be able to recall and understand the concept of moves management, and to be able to think about how you currently apply multi-phased approaches to donor developments in your own contexts, and how you can use moves management to further inform your practices. I want us to be able to think about how we analyze the success of donor development strategies over a prescribed period, and not just tying fundraising success to dollars raised, but to other metrics that are really important to instituting and continuing to maintain philanthropic culture. Want to be able for all of us to begin thinking about how we create an approach to donor development for select major gift prospects. So segmenting the donor populations that we have at our institutions to develop cohorts towards major gifts. And then finally being able to operationalize some key terms such as philanthropy, philanthropic culture, and donor management. All right, so to preface my remarks today, I want to share a little bit with all of you about who I am. Geneva did a really good job introducing who I am professionally, but this is a little bit more about me personally and my family's ties to higher education, public higher education, public regional university higher education, into HBCUs. With my nephew graduating this spring from Mississippi Valley, really proud to say that we have 3 generations of public regional university graduates in the family now. I've been in higher education for 26 years as a professor and executive, and a scholar and an ethnographer, and storyteller by training. And I've spent 25% of my career at historically Black colleges. My family collectively has over 125 years of experience in public education. Education is the family business. And it means something to me, not only as my career and as a subject of research for me, but I truly believe in the power of public education and public higher education specifically to transform the trajectory of folks' lives. It's done it for my family. That's a picture of my dad, the black and white one there, by the way, with legendary Coach Eddie Robinson from Grambling State University. My father was a first generation college student who was at Grambling at the time when Coach Rob was there, influenced him to become a coach and an educator. And then that transformed the trajectory of my life, my siblings' lives, and their children's lives. So really, really, truly believe in the power of public education. And that's why public education, philanthropy in particular, is so important to me. All right, so let's get into why we're here today. So an arrival story. So something that began cementing my work in higher education, fundraising, advancement in particular, and I thought was a good way to lead into our conversation this morning. I want to share a story with you from my time as Director of Athletics at Southern University. And this is also an excerpt from the book that will be out next year on HBCU fundraising, perspectives on HBCU fundraising. The excerpt is entitled, "Everything I Needed to Know About HBCU Philanthropic Culture I Learned at a Jaguar Nation Tailgate." So as a brand new athletic director in my first full year at Southern University after a sellout Southwestern Athletic Conference football game the previous weekend, I trekked over to the ticket manager's office excitedly to hear about the financial impact of the game. It was an oversold game with over 30,000 in attendance, over 100 tailgating spots sold, and I expected to hear that we had successfully grossed $500,000 or more for the long weekend's toil. $461,486, ticket manager noted, and upon sensing my disappointment and confusion, she immediately added that my expectations for tailgating revenue were excessive. "Everybody wants something for free. You know how we do," is what she said. I simply couldn't understand how so many tailgaters, we had over 70,000 people on our footprint that weekend, were allowed to participate without paying to gain access to our tailgating facilities. With our utility, custodial, and security expenses, we'd apparently barely broken even on the enterprise. As I asked if we needed additional security to audit the access of the participating patrons, I was informed that many of the tailgating spots were accessed by members of the university's numerous booster clubs, who for decades had been comped, allowing them to tailgate for free. The next week, I took 3 booster club officials to lunch to learn more about their expectations and to share my concerns about the nature of the expected arrangement. And what I learned astounded me. It placed my frustration in a different perspective. One booster club leader shared that every year the money they raised ensured that every senior college athlete received a letter jacket. Another club leader shared that their annual expenses covered putting on team banquets to celebrate the annual accomplishments of the men's and women's basketball teams in style. Third meeting revealed that every home football game, they prepared lunch and dinner for every single football recruit who visited the campus and their families, and then proceeded to feed every single football player, family member, girlfriend, and passerby after every home football game. After having these conversations, I would not only change my mind about charging them the full price for tailgating on home football weekends, I laughed at our good fortune. The lost revenue from providing this kind of hospitality and stewardship to all participants was erased 2 to 3-fold. The cost of providing a college athlete in a home football experience par excellence among Division I HBCUs would be astronomical if it wasn't for these good Samaritans, and we were fortunate to have them. We often say philanthropic culture is about giving with no expectation of anything in return. But the absence of our generosity in response to donors isn't just bad partnership, it's poor stewardship. These folks weren't looking for a hookup. Hell, they were hooking us up. What I initially perceived as mere transactionalism was anything but. I instantly recalled a moment from my own past as a college athlete when my team played a home game versus Southern, with their fans required to travel 3 hours away for the competition. Our stadium recorded record attendance for that game, and our entire campus was covered from one end to the other with the flags and the colors of the visiting team. After the game, which we won, I was walking to my car in the parking lot, and complete strangers yelled out to me to come get something to eat, some seafood gumbo. "Y'all got lucky this week. We'll get y'all next time," they exclaimed, and I filled my bowl with crab and shrimp and gumbo so damn good, I couldn't help but wonder why they treat someone who worked so hard to make sure they lost the game that well. "Compliments of the Jaguar Nation, young man," they said. There ain't a single thing I need to teach those folk about philanthropy. Not as a college football player, not as an athletic director, and not as a critic writing this reflection nearly 3 decades later. So here are my takeaways from that story. First of all, miscommunication about need and intent destroys philanthropic potential, right? Closed lines of communication don't do us any good in advancement work. Giving without expectation of receiving anything in return is an insufficient definition of philanthropy because it eschews accountability and stewardship, right? We want donors to give and not expect anything in return. That means we're not doing our part as stewards of that potential investment. How we recognize philanthropic engagement and how we fail to recognize it is more important than any other metric or measurement that we employ. Open and honest communication is absolutely critical to the work that we do. In retrospect, and as I think about moves management and how it could have, should have, might have been employed in that situation, there was no research done on the individuals in that booster club because we didn't have prospect management, right? We didn't have anybody researching or looking into who those individuals were. We didn't have major gift officers meeting with them to learn about why they gave or what they were passionate about giving to. We didn't have good stewardship processes to ensure that we did what we said we were going to do when we said we were going to do it. We didn't have good follow-up procedures for meeting with them to talk about, okay, we've got this thing covered. Let's talk about the next project. Or tell us about something else that you might be interested in. Because all of those lines of communication weren't there, and the structures and the procedures that create philanthropic culture were not in place, we created this environment where transactions dominated our communications and our engagement with donors. there was no room or potential for philanthropic culture to be developed or to thrive. So a couple of definitions that I think are important for us in today's conversation. So what is philanthropy, right? The Greek term for it means loving people, right? The desire to promote the welfare of others expressed especially by the generous donation of money to good causes, but loving people is at the core of it, right? And that loving, to me, is a series, it's a set of actions. It's about getting to know the individual, what they're passionate about, and moving them through a series of actions and procedures that continue to reveal what are your institution or organization's needs, how can they help, and then eventually getting them to the point where they start beating us to the punch and they're asking how they can help before we even put proposals in front of them. When you truly love and care about the people that you're engaged in this relationship with, that is how philanthropy can emerge from the work that we do. Culture, then. So culture, and I'm using a definition here from Clifford Geertz's The Interpretation of Culture, system of inherited conceptions expressed in symbolic forms, right? He mentions language, dance, food, dress, ceremony. Essentially, culture is the tangible expression of our ideologies and our sets of beliefs. They're the things that you can see around you, right? Tangibly, that you can touch, taste, hear, smell, interact directly with. And it's a good measure of accountability for us, right? When we talk about what kind of culture we have in terms of our fundraising culture or that we want to develop, if you don't see the tangible expressions of the culture that you say that you have, right? It's a way of telling on us, right? If you don't have the culture, those things aren't tangible. You don't see them, you don't feel them, they aren't part of what you're doing, right? So you're looking for these tangible ways of measuring culture. And moves management, which was a specific donor development approach developed in the 1980s, which refers to this process by which a donor is moved through the process of cultivation through solicitation, is a way of creating that culture, right? Creating the tangible elements of a culture that is rich with philanthropic potential, right? So it's something that we are responsible for actively working to create. And as we create it, you begin seeing the evidence of it around you, not just in how much money is being raised or collected, right? But in all the kinds of activity that's going on between you and donors, the conversations you're having, the questions they're asking, the ways that they're volunteering their support and helping to grow your donor base. That's the culture that we want to work towards in moves management, right? So I want to talk specifically about the moves management program that we have at UWSP. And before we move into that, couple of notes. Philanthropic culture is not merely about giving without expectation return, or repeat giving without all the whining and dining, or giving without having to be asked or told, right? That's evidence of wanting to be in a transactional relationship with donors, where they're just expecting them to give to these projects and then minimizing the work that we do as that giving takes place. Those are insufficient definitions that we want to work towards examining, troubling, setting aside, and introducing new definitions. So philanthropic culture, donor management, right, which is the way that we are attempting to use moves in the work that we do at UWSP. Engages donors and staff in continual praxis of mutual relationship building, philanthropic engagement and fulfillment, mutual education and enrichment. Okay, so we are engaging with individuals in conversation. We are sharing perspectives, information, insider details to grow and develop relationships more thoroughly, and then growing with the donor and the donor prospect towards identifying means of support for the projects that are so important to the work that we do on a daily basis on our campus and with our organization. So at UWSP, we use an 8-step process. The first 4 steps are about our research and preparation, right? So The first step, identification of prospects, right? So who are the individuals who, if you use a CRM, your database, who are all the individuals that you know who could potentially be prospects for major gift donor development at your institution, right? At UWSP, in our CRM, when I arrived here in 2023, we had 120,000 profiles roughly, and about 86,500 with contactable information, a way that we could actually get in touch with folks if we did want to have conversations with them about potentially being donors. We narrowed that to around 1,500, and this was honestly, it's not possible to manage 86,500 people. I wonder sometimes how we even manage the 700 that we are actively engaging as major gift donors and prospects. But I just kind of drew a line out there and said, let's look at anybody who's given $1,500 or more cumulatively to the university over the course of their entire giving career. And so that narrowed down to about 1,500 prospects for us to use at that point. And those were flagged for further review. Over time, of course, that leaves out individuals with high net worth and potential to give who aren't already donors, right? We can always add those people to this research and preparation process later. Younger alumni who have potential to give more down the line but haven't given yet would not have been included in this list. We can always add to this list, but this is just where we had to start in the process here. So we started with that 1,500 that we were prepared to do further research on. And our next step in prospect research, now we're talking about the ongoing process of updating donors' information to ensure we have as much data as possible to review so that we can make further decisions about moving them towards the donor engagement process. I personally believe prospect research is everybody's job. You may have a system set up at your institution or organization where you have software which feeds you information about address updates. You may use your annual solicitation process and then pay for address corrections from the post office to get you that updated information. We use software that updates addresses, deceased individuals, and employment. We have student workers involved in the prospect research process, full-time staff. Even I daily do prospect research work. I believe it's everybody's job. We have to have up-to-date information on individuals. If there's someone out there who is a senior vice president at a Fortune 1000 company, and in your database, you have that person's wrong home address, incorrect email address, you have the job that they had 3 jobs ago. You don't even know who is in your prospect pool for further development if you don't have a system for doing good prospect research. Do as much of it as you can. No system's going to be perfect, but everybody needs to be thinking actively about doing this kind of research so that you can move towards identifying your prospects more thoroughly before we decide to engage them. Our next step, qualification. So this is doing research into these prospects, looking at their giving records, their engagement, right? So we invite them to events on campus or when we go on the road to do events sometimes in various locations. Are they participating? Are they engaging? Are they coming to those events? Are they engaged with the university in other ways? Are they coming to campus and being guest lecturers? Are they offering to mentor students? We want to know everything about the donor that we can before we qualify them as a major gift prospect, right? So we're looking for giving record, engagement with the university, and anything that we can use to determine affinity, right? We want people with giving capacity connected to the university who are tangibly expressing their enthusiasm, passion, or belief in the institution. You can measure that in 100 different ways. At a previous institution, we call this hand raise, right? So the literal and metaphorical ways that people sort of put a hand in the air and say, I'm ready. I want to have further conversations with you about giving. One of my favorite indicators of that is the prospect that you find out is bringing their child to campus for a campus visit, right? So someone who cares enough about your institution that they're bringing their child to go to school there, right? Or the individual who's asked about a gift, and then you do the research and find out that that individual's spouse is also an alum, right? All these things that we sort of, yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense. We know that. But we formalized it, right? We're formalizing it into a process where when we're making decisions about, is this somebody we should go have a further conversation with? That's the checklist of questions that I'm asking as we qualify individuals for potential development. Since July of 2023, so in roughly the last 20 months, I've personally performed over 2,000 donor prospect research queries, right? So over 2,000 times, pulled those profiles and done the research and gone through this qualification process. We've qualified over 850 prospects for our major gift officers. We have 5 full-time major gift officers, 2 individuals who do some at least part-time work. And then in my decreasing spare time, I actually try to get out there and do major gift development work myself. So we've qualified over 850 prospects. I ask the major gift officers to manage a portfolio of 100 prospects at any given time. So that's how many we've gone through that process with. So remember that first slide, right? 86,500. This process has now gotten that down to roughly 700 to 750, okay? Final step for research and preparation, action plans, right? So this is time where major gift officers will meet with faculty, staff, colleagues, other donors, and board members who may know this prospect to give us information and background on them so we can learn more about what they might be passionate about, what they might be interested in, what kinds of projects they might actually be interested in having further conversation about. Something to note at this point, we're halfway through our procedure here for moves management, donor development, and the first 4 steps all occur before we engage the prospect. We've not made a single phone call, email, inquiry, nothing. This is how much research has to go into prospect development before we even reach out to them. And the reason that that's so important is because we have a budget to manage, right? We have limited resources, we have limited time, limited people for the outreach, and limited money to travel and reach out to folks. We want to make sure that before we qualify someone for a conversation about making a gift of $25,000 or more to the university, that we have every indicator that we can have scientifically to ensure that we're hunting in the right woods, as my grandfather used to say. All right. So now we're on to the part of the moves management process that more people are generally familiar with, right? Once you actually start directly engaging, okay? So step 5, cultivation, right? Engaging with the prospect over a meal, coffee, a home visit perhaps, on turf that feels comfortable to them, to begin having a conversation about their time that's been connected to your organization or institution, what they've been up to in their personal life, their professional life. Do they tie the two together naturally? Do they see that the organization that you represent has a specific impact on them that's very positive, that they are very enthusiastic about? And learning more about who they are as potential philanthropists. Do they support or volunteer their time to other organizations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Really quick story here about cultivation. You want it to be comfortable for them. You want it to be on turf that feels like home to them. There was a donor who was a judge in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that I used to go and meet with a number of years ago. And he used to tell me, Broussard, I'm at work for 7:30 in the morning. I don't go home till 6 o'clock at night, and I bring home my briefs with me. I don't have time for lunch, dinner, drinks, this stuff on the weekend. I don't have it. If you want to come and meet with me, meet me at the gym, 5 in the morning, we'll play racquetball. And if you ever played racquetball with somebody in their 70s who invited you to play racquetball, you know what I'm about to tell you. If you don't know, this man whooped my ass going and coming and never broke a sweat. I don't even think he took his dress shoes off. Ran me up and down the court, okay? But eventually in that conversation, you say, all right, Broussard, you had enough? Yeah, let's talk about my scholarship, right? Do it on turf that feels good to them. Don't Don't, you know, don't do anything that puts you at personal risk, obviously. But to the extent that you can meet with them in places and at times, I have the young woman here who's online, right? Meeting with folks virtually has really changed the game, right? That very busy executive that you want to meet with, you can only get 30 to 45 minutes of their time, and they might get caught in traffic and wipe out your whole meeting. If you can get the virtual meeting with them and that works for them, absolutely take that opportunity. Step 6, negotiation and early solicitation, right? So this is the part of the process where we start discussing potential opportunities, right? We've met with folks, we've talked about what they might be interested in, passionate about, and we're starting to identify projects or opportunities with our organizations, with our institutions that they might be interested in. Don't be afraid to get folks involved in the early stages for planning and design, where you can kind of pull the veil back a little bit and provide an opportunity that is not available to most people. Again, we're trying to build deep, meaningful relationships with folks. So spend some time curating an experience that might be really meaningful to them. If they are going to take the time and make a campus visit, make sure it's with the right individuals on your campus and involved in the right kinds of opportunities that allow them to get questions answered, to inspire them, to kind of get their curiosity up, so that they can really start getting beyond that. Well, this $500,000 check, no. You're trying to build a new wing on a building. You're trying to expand a facility. You're trying to endow a professorship. That might be something I'm interested in. And you want the meetings that you have with them to facilitate that kind of ideation and that kind of imagination. We split our solicitation process here up into 2 steps. The early negotiations, when you're talking about possibilities. The late solicitation is when we move to specifically asking for permission to deliver a proposal, right? We found a project that someone might be interested in. We want to put a specific proposal in front of you that really helps our organization move forward in a way that's really meaningful and special to you, that allows you to leave the legacy that you want to leave, that allows you to make the kind of investment that you're going to feel really proud about. A really important note at this stage, and this is really, there's 2 key things that need to happen at this stage and at stage 8. It's really germane to the work that we do, specifically with low resource institutions where we don't have a lot of fundraisers, a lot of time to waste on individuals who, they might have a lot of money and they might talk a big game, but you've been working on trying to get a gift out of this person for 5 years and it just doesn't happen. Disqualification, right, needs to happen, right? You can't get stuck in the cultivation process with someone where time and time again, you're inviting them to the suite for the football game with the chancellor or president. You're spending hundreds of dollars on meals for them. You're comping their participation in events on your campus, and years and years and years later, that person's not giving. If you put the formal proposal in front of them, and on multiple occasions that person tells you no, it's okay to disqualify that person as a major gift prospect and move on to other prospects. If they decide at a later date they're ready to get involved, they'll let you know. If they were never going to do it in the first place, our time is better spent moving on and focusing on other candidates. If they're engaged with the university but not as donors, let's involve them with alumni relations. If they're engaged with the university but not as donors, let's get them on the Business Advisory Council. Maybe they'll hire some of your graduates. Let's get folks on the bus, on the right bus, and in the right seat. And some folks aren't philanthropic. They're not donors. They're not ever going to be donors. It's important to be able to disqualify folks as well as you qualify. Final step, most important step, by far, stewardship. We have to do what we say we are going to do when we say we are going to do it. And that doesn't just mean, hey, we got your check and we deposited it, right? If someone has endowed a scholarship, it is letting them know, hey, got your check deposited. Here is the charter or the contract that stipulates the parameters for awarding the scholarship. When you begin the scholarship awarding process, you let the donor know that that process is beginning and that we're excited about it. When you award the scholarship, you provide an opportunity for the student who is the recipient or the recipients to perhaps communicate with the donor to express their appreciation. We get the donor invited to the lunch or the dinner or the gala event that you have where you recognize scholarship donors and connect them with students. We share information, not just directly with them, but your public relations, your media relations folks on your campus that share good information about that college or that school that they've invested in. You make sure that the donor gets a copy of that information so that they feel good and feel informed about what's going on about the university. If we do this well over time, eventually that donor will become someone who contacts you, gets excited about contacting you about, I want to do more. Love the students that we've met, want to make this opportunity available to more students, or I have my scholarship over here, my spouse wants to do the scholarship over here, or we want to talk about these amazing faculty or administrators that you have and how we can invest in professional development, program development for them. Stewardship, sharing information, making sure that folks feel good about their investment and know the impact of it. So important, right? And if we do this stage right, it allows us to restart that process, right? Where we go back to stage one, right? Where we're updating the information, we're growing with the donor as that donor moves up in their organization or grows that business. We're starting to qualify them for more opportunities, different opportunities, bringing them back in to learn more about what's going on at the organization. The process never ends. And this is how we get out of these loops of getting a gift from someone and then putting them in permanent stewardship. Somebody makes a $50,000 gift, and then 40 years later, their child is still getting free tickets to your football games because of the gift they made 40 years ago. We have to steward the gift properly and then start those processes over, right? By opening up, sharing information, talking about needs, concerns that the institution has, new opportunities for investment. To quickly conclude, and then I'll hopefully have at least 15 minutes here to do questions and comments. Some concluding statements. Donor management that utilizes moves management is informed by practice, supported by decades of implementation and scientific study. Nearly 3.5 decades of professionals who work in nonprofit development, nonprofit organizations, colleges, universities, various social service nonprofits have been using moves management, studying it, applying it, evaluating it, growing the knowledge base around it, publishing in academic journals around it, talking about it at national conferences, 3.5 decades. This is not fly-by-night science. And while some people think that moves management needs to be tweaked or it needs to be less scientific and more holistic, and I'm certainly amenable to those criticisms, it's important to learn about moves management, attempt to apply it, evaluate it, and then if you want to grow how you do it or tailor it specifically to your conditions, that's the way to go. But moves management is very important for us to know as fundraising professionals. I encourage everyone to learn everything that you can about it. Any organization can begin employing moves management at any time with as small or as large group of donors as you wish. I was having coffee with a gentleman who runs a consulting firm, and he was talking about this new wave of moves management where these large universities are taking perhaps 5 or 10 or 20 people and developing this highly tailored, stylized moves management specifically for them. And this is about the long game, right? They're saying we're not going to ask this person for money for perhaps the next 12, 24, 36 months, right? You can do it with a small or as large a group as you can manage. But I encourage you to think about developing a cohort of individuals within your donor and prospect base that you can apply moves management towards to start developing philanthropic culture with them that hopefully can grow over time. Finally, philanthropic culture comes from researching prospects thoroughly, developing plans to engage them carefully, and engaging with them openly and meaningfully being honest about expectations and taking the journey along with folks. It's not a game. It's not brinkmanship. It's not checkers. It's not chess. We're not trying to trick people into giving money. There should be no surprises in this game, right? I am genuinely astonished when we work as hard as we do to put proposals in front of folks and then they say no. That generally means that something in the process has been neglected before we get to that point. And when it's done right, we eventually get to the point where we don't have to chase donors and prospects down to get their help on projects because they're beating us to the punch. They're reaching out to us. They're wanting to learn about doing more, volunteering more, bringing more people to the table to help us accomplish the goals that are mutually important to us. I will stop at that point, and I know that a hand went up during the presentation there, so maybe we can get to that one first, but happy to take any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you very much. Yes, we got a question from Paulette.
Well, it's actually not a question. First, thank you for your presentation. It was excellent. And but I do believe that the best thing that sometimes we can do as fundraisers is to share ideas. Now, I started out my career in fundraising as a major gifts officer. And when I was working for the University of Missouri at the School of Mines and Metallurgy, one of the things I talked our dean into doing, I was the major gifts officer for that particular school, and I talked our dean into starting what I called an alumni advisory council, because let's face it, our alumni are our best resource. That's the resource we needed. And the question was, how could I get the alumni to be more engaged in the school? And so one of the things, and I believe in CASE, we all know what CASE is, copy and steal everything. So I believe in sharing so that you can copy and steal it if you want to. But one of the things in doing that, in bringing alumni who had been giving for years, but really, I couldn't get them engaged in the organization the way I wanted them to be engaged. So I invited them to come and be a part of an advisory council to the dean. And essentially what we did is we said, now you all are successful business people. What is it that our students don't have that you think they need to have to be able to go into the work that you're doing? School of Mines and Metallurgy, that's all engineering. It was mining engineering, metallurgical engineering, ceramic engineering. What don't our students have that you think they need to have to be successful in the industries that you are a part of? And what they determined was that a lot of students who are engineering students don't really know how to make presentations. They don't know how to write something that is not necessarily scientific. And they felt like that was keeping them from being able to move up inside of the companies that they were in. And what the dean decided to do was to start in a new program in the school called Writing Across the Curriculum, which meant that they were going to teach differently the students. But what that did for the alumni is now they've become engaged. They were like, okay, now I can go to the dean and I can talk to the dean about this. And we would bring them all together at homecoming. And we would have a meeting with a luncheon for them to be able to express those things. But what it did was not only did it have these alumni giving more money, they opened the doors to their companies. So now we could get the corporate and foundations people engaged with the work that these alumni were doing, because they were opening the doors to their companies for us to be able to raise money from the company itself and not just from the alumni. So sometimes it's not just even so to your point about stewardship, huge stewardship opportunity, because now when these people called the dean picked up the phone and would talk to them. And that did more for my ability to help them to move their gifts up than anything else, because now they knew that if they called the dean was going to answer, because they knew that the dean knew that they were going to bring them some good information. So just wanted to share that one, because what you said, we're saying about the most important thing is stewardship. It's not so much always has to be one-on-one stewardship. It's how you maybe bring them all together and put them in front of somebody who is going to value what it is that they have to say. And now they're vested in the work that you're doing inside the organization. So just wanted to share that.
That's an excellent point, and a way to tie that back to the presentation more explicitly. If you think this is a lot of work, like, God, that's a lot of steps to get to, we're going to ask somebody for some money, but we don't have enough time, we don't have enough people. We have to deputize other people in our organizations. We have to share this work. Not just because it's a high volume of work and we need the additional help, but there are people with other kinds of expertise and information to share that we don't have. And there are other ways of engaging folks, right? That person that you think might be a big donor might start out on your alumni board, go to one of these advisory boards, be in a position where they can talk about business and industry and curriculum and what your students are going to need to know when they come out. Or if I were recruiting interns to my business, here's what I would need them to have. Okay, we've done that. Let's talk about these internships now. If I'm going to hire people, here's the information we want them to have. We've done that now. Let's get you hiring these folks. Because alumni who are gainfully employed, right, can become donors later down the line. So taking the journey with that person who might not be ready to give right now, but who at some point down the line, either through their own wealth or their business or both, can make strategic investments in the university, absolutely crucial. But it's important that that work be shared, right? If individuals make it clear to us they're not going to be donors, but they want to get involved in these other ways, we got to introduce them to some provosts. We got to introduce them to some deans, some chairs, some other folks on the campus, get them engaged that way. And then if at some point down the road they express the interest in perhaps making a gift or doing a larger investment through their company or their corporate foundation, then we re-engage them through university advancement or institutional advancement.
Do we have any other questions or comments? We've got about 7 or so minutes before we wrap up. So if there are other questions, we are able to take those. And if not, I got a couple of questions of my own just to make sure folks are getting some additional perspectives. So yeah, in the meantime, if folks can put the question in the chat or feel free to use the features on the bottom, the reaction features, to raise your hand. But I have a question for you, Dr. Broussard. So if we think about, some of our institutions or most of our institutions are smaller, or some organizations that are actually really small, and they're trying to think about the value add or, the return on investment for using the move management cycle. Could you speak to the long-term ROI that they need to consider versus, the short-term type of transactional approach that they may be using?
And so I think the most important way to think about this is okay, well, right now we have all of these pressing concerns that we have to raise money for right now. We're putting on, events and, there are certain kinds of transactional giving that we cannot abandon in favor of fully going towards moves management. And what I would say to that is you don't need to do either or, right? We can be engaging in moves management with, as I mentioned earlier, we're actively engaging in moves management with about 700 of our 86,500 prospects here. And then other individuals are being evaluated in real time. So we do have some donors, some folks who only participate in, the kind of pay-to-play events, right? So a golf tournament fundraiser over here, a gala over there, a fundraiser for one of the sports teams over here, involvement through a booster club. If those individuals start behaving in patterns that we think that this person might be good to single out for, then we'll move them in to the moves management process. But again, you can start with a small or as large a group as you feel like you have the resources to work with. And something else that you might want to consider doing is you may have, not through scientific application of the moves management process, but through pure happenstance, you may have a donor or a set of donors who have, that's been the experience that they've received at your institution over time, right? through no specific design, right? It's just sort of how they've gotten to that point. I think going through the process of reverse engineering how your biggest donors have gotten to the point that they are, and then developing process that matches that and then attempting to replicate it isn't just a good scientific experiment. It could be really good donor management. Take 5 of your largest donors or 5 individuals who recently have made large gifts and pick up the phone or go see them and ask them why they did it. Ask them about their donor story. Ask them about how they got to this point. Take copious notes, right? When Clifford Geertz, who I mentioned earlier about culture, he was a cultural anthropologist. He would go to these uncontacted populations, not knowing anything about them. And because you didn't know anything about them, when you observed them, you wrote down everything because you didn't know what was going to be important when you analyzed it later. Have a conversation with a handful of your donors about, why do you give to this university? Why do you care so much? How do we find other folks like you and replicate that process? Don't ask them for a dime. People will have a hard time saying no to that ask, right? And so then you take, like I said, maybe it's 1, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. But if you start learning that, well, wow, if we got this person to this level of interest and enthusiasm, and all we had to do was that, like, we think it's way harder than it is, right? I always encourage people who do the work that we do. Think about yourself as a philanthropist. What do you give to? What do you support? What are you interested in and why? And how radically different might it be that other folks who are our prospects would think differently than you? And then just try to replicate those things. And a lot of times it doesn't take as much money as you think it's going to take. It doesn't take as much time as you think it's going to take. It's just shifting your perspective.
Thank you for that answer. I think that's really great to highlight the reverse engineering and then replicating whatever process you're able to unearth from there, whatever, knowledge, and duplicating those efforts so that you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but you're learning from the experience that your institution has already had. I think that's a great point to make. And then the time we have left, so I know we're wrapping up, so I wanted to make sure that folks have the opportunity to, get the information and, share information in terms of feedback with us so that you are able to let us know how you thought today's presentation went, as well as continue to stay in touch. So you see on your screen, we have an evaluation form that you can submit. It's very brief, just asks about today's presentation as well as what you would like to see in the future. So we're able to curate and tailor these sessions to your liking, because you all are our stakeholder group. So we are really intentional about making sure that we're providing content and resources that are valuable for you all. So Christina's also put that in the chat, so it's easier for you to click on that link via chat. If you want to get in touch with us and engage with us, we do a series of trainings that we can come to your campus and do for your advancement professionals, as well as come to your nonprofit organization and support the culture of philanthropy there as well. So you can reach us at UNCF contact, which is just a short bit.ly link to get to our website and our contact information. And then lastly, please feel free to get us or to get in touch with us on LinkedIn. So it's the Teaching and Learning Center LinkedIn site, but also we provide resources related to the Philanthropy Institute as well. And then also very, very important is because you have contributed and you've been a part of the effort for today's hour, all participants will be able or eligible to receive 1 CFRE credit if you are a part of that organization. And if you are a UNCF development officer, as well as a development officer of one of our member institutions, you have a discount opportunity for your CFRE certification and recertification. So if you want more details about that, please reach out to us at uncfpi@uncf.org for more information about how you can get signed up for CFRE if you're not already certified there. So yes, we really appreciate you, Dr. Broussard, for today's time. And I know we're at the hour, so I don't want to hold anyone. But if there are any outstanding questions, I'm going to move over the chat to make sure I haven't missed anything. But if there are any outstanding questions, comments, feedback, please feel free to unmute your microphone and share that with us. And if not, we really appreciate everyone for being here and for committing the hour. Have a wonderful day.